Welcome to Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by SEO SAMBA. Comprehensive high-performing marketing solutions for mature and emerging franchise brands. To supercharge your franchise marketing, go to SEOSAMBA.com. That's SEOSAMBA.com.
Welcome to Franchise Marketing Radio. Lee Cantor and Stone Payton here with you this afternoon. Today's episode is brought to you in part by the Business Radio X Studio Partner Program, equipping franchisors to help franchisees dominate their local market. To learn more about serving your market and growing your business, go to mybrxstudio.com. Lee, this is going to be a fantastic segment. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast President with Cousin Subs, Mr. Jason Westhoff. How are you, Jason?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jason, before we get too far into things, can you tell us a little bit about Cousin Subs? How did it start, and what makes you guys special?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people ask. Cousin Subs was founded in 1972, so we're approaching our 50th year of business. Founded by a gentleman named William Specht, who is still our chairman of the board, and his cousin. So that's actually how it got its name. Bill, our founder, he was a New Jersey native, was in the military, settled in Wisconsin, and basically got to the point where he was missing his East Coast subs. Decided to fill that void by not just making them for himself, but opening his first Cousin Subs. And right now we're about a 100-unit chain. We own corporately 28 units, and it's his legacy that we continue to carry forward. But we have some indulgent products, anywhere from your typical turkey to a cheesesteak to some varying items that most people don't have, that cheese curds, which is a requirement in Wisconsin, fries and shakes. So a little bit of everything for everybody's palate.
Now, can you talk about how it kind of evolved from just being the founders' sub shops to, hey, you know what, maybe we should franchise this and get other people involved?
Yeah, through the course of business, through the 80s and the early 90s, they had built a system up to quite a few units, to the point where it was a little bit more difficult to manage as a system, owning all of the stores and operating the stores yourself. Franchising was really taking off at that point as well. You know, the founders were looking to cash in on some of the equity that they built up in the brand. And they had a number of corporate employees who were interested in being franchisees. So it actually was a really nice way for the owners to pay back the employees that helped them build the business and allow them to become franchisees. And many of those franchisees are still with us today. They're boomers, and they may be looking at their next steps in life soon, which is going to be interesting because we've actually gotten to the point where we've acquired stores back. So it's, the ebbs and flows in franchising.
So now, how are you counseling the franchisees how to kind of deal with the situation we have right now with COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was, we didn't have the textbook like many people out there, so we've kind of taken it day by day. But I think the biggest thing that we did was to ensure that we were supplying one source of communication. That became me. I kind of took over the ship for all communication. We turned down any communications that were non-essential immediately. We made sure that all of our communications that had any value to anybody to be able to move forward with their day and to move forward into tomorrow, that those items were forwarded to me, funneled to me, and then I would put them out in a once or twice a day communication. So then the owners knew exactly who to look for and where that information was coming from. And then we also took the steps to make sure that we were interpreting everything that was going on with the sick leave changes and the FMLA changes, and then also with what was going on with the CARES Act as well. So, spending a very significant amount of our time getting ourselves educated so our franchisees didn't necessarily have to do the same amount of diligence, and then funneling that information to them in the pieces that were relevant to restaurant operators.
Now, prior to this, was Cousins good at kind of curbside and delivery?
Oh, that's a great question. 3 years ago, we endeavored in putting in a centralized POS platform and back office platform that we 100% manage corporately. And that was one of the best decisions we've ever made, because what it allowed us to do is, we were not a curbside brand. We implemented curbside in 3 days. We were able to leverage our current technology platform to do that. We have a strong number of people who've worked in other concepts where those concepts actually had curbside, so we're familiar with what it looked like and how it should feel. So that piece was easy. It was easier for us to do than a lot of other brands are probably seeing. The delivery, we had already engaged with third-party delivery over a year ago, so that was something that we were going down the path. Having significant delivery in our business already with Jimmy John's, that was a niche that we knew we needed to fill if we were going to remain competitive from that standpoint to be able to attract those guests. So we originally had our own delivery programs, and then we moved forward with DoorDash as a partner last year. And so I think there were just a lot of opportunities for us that we already had we kind of already had our toes in the water on that allowed us to max that out.
Now, has there been any kind of feedback from the local owners in terms of the importance of, hey, what would have been great is if we had email lists and ways to communicate with the group of people that are around my location in order to really let them know that, hey, support us if you want us to stick around, like to create kind of those systems to help the local person really leverage their community.
Yeah, it's a very good point you bring up. A lot of what we do for our local store marketing involves a local Facebook page for each of the individual stores. And those are Facebook pages that we assist managing. Otherwise, the owner manages as well, and we just verify the content is appropriate. So that's kind of the grassroots piece that's always been going on with our brand, which is great. And those that do it really well, you can see the differences. Certainly their sales volumes have not dropped to the levels that others where they're not that active have. But everything we're doing also from a marketing standpoint, we totally changed how we were marketing. We took our marketing away from places where people were no longer seeing it and started funneling it towards people where we knew they were going to be, using streaming media. So going on top of streaming media, making sure that we were utilizing each of the individual pieces we had in place. So we rolled out a loyalty app last year. And one of the unintended byproducts of what we're seeing right now is a large spike in people joining our loyalty app. We're offering a free sub with anybody who joins right now, and that allows us also to market through that avenue. And then we've also had what we call the Fresh Baked News, which has been a fan club, or basically a club that is email based. So we do a lot of different marketing at the local level for those guests who want it, and for those guests who don't want it, we're also doing we're doing marketing in places where they can find us now.
Now, are you able to help the local owner kind of get the most out of the relationships that they have maybe with vendors or suppliers or partners in the local market to really work together to, so that you can help each other? And maybe from the franchisor level, you're able to kind of lean on some of your suppliers and vendors to have them help the local person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two big things, I think, from us from a supplier standpoint. We all get our food from the same supplier, and we're able to negotiate terms with our supplier, which basically are allowing people to float about 30 days worth of cash, which has been really helpful for them. So if they're on 7-day terms, they basically could go to a 30-day term. And then the second thing is working with our POS vendor. So in POS, there's costs because these are all software as service. We've got platforms. We've got the POS, we've got the credit card terminals themselves. We've got, 3 or 4 different other expenses that are all tied in with specific vendors. And so we had an opportunity there to try and plus that out, which we've been able to help alleviate some of those fees for our franchise system. Having been a former franchisee in the Pizza Hut and the Applebee's systems, I realized the value of what a good franchisor can bring to the table, and really focusing on bottom line initiatives instead of top line initiatives. Making sure that if it's going to grow the bottom line, that it actually is to the benefit for everybody to do it, and then focusing how you can move those initiatives forward. So in this time, cash preservation is the priority. And if you can preserve your cash and project your cash over the next 90 days, anything that we can do to assist that, we're trying to step forward in every manner we can.
Now, are you able to kind of quickly disseminate best practices? Maybe you have a franchisee in a local market. Hey, we did this, and then they can kind of share the learning back to you guys, and then you can then share that learning back to the other franchisees in other markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the benefits that we have is because we are pretty geocentric. We're a majority, 90 plus of our stores are in Wisconsin, and then the stores that are not in Wisconsin are in the Chicagoland area, which is, an hour and a half drive from here. What we're doing is we're able to share things that are a little bit, we have an intimate group of owners, first of all, and beyond that, we're able to take some of their best practices and roll them forward. For the most part, we've always kind of been like that as a system, but we do host weekly or biweekly calls with our franchise advisory council too, just to make sure that we're on the right track and to bring forward ideas from people. But I think for the most part, the individual franchisees also have their own subsets of franchisees out there where they share information. But my last message on Friday to them, just to end on a positive note, was to share how one of our franchisees was using his local Facebook feed to give 25% discounts to first responders. And what ended up starting out as just kind of an idea of how I can help these people out turned into a number of people starting a pay it forward program where they were saying, if you're covering 25%, I want to cover 25%, or I want to cover, and he started receiving donations or people buying party boxes for these different frontline workers, and then was basically putting their personalized message on top of those boxes and taking those out into the frontline services. And then the crazy thing that happened is that pay it forward just grew even larger, because then what would happen is he would go to the healthcare provider and bring them these sandwiches that are being sponsored by a local business to say thank you. And the person would come to the door with a handful of cash saying, this is from us to help you pay it forward to the next person. So, crazy little grassroots stuff like that, where people just really do look out for each other and care. Those are probably some of the simplest things that we can do, but it really just shows a really great side of how we can be involved in our communities.
Right. We're seeing that as well. I've had the privilege to interview lots of, especially restaurants here in the Atlanta area where we're based. And we're seeing the same type of thing where people can sponsor, if you buy a meal, then you can sponsor a meal for a first responder or a hospital worker or somebody like that. And we're seeing, like you said, an opportunity for the restaurateur to partner with maybe a law firm or a professional service firm to sponsor 500 meals, and it'll be brought to you by blah, blah, blah law firm. So there's lots of ways, a lot of creativity happening and a lot of resourcefulness. And I think that's what makes kind of the United States kind of likely to survive and even thrive. The right folks are going to kind of thrive in this kind of environment. So it's great to see that creativity and resourcefulness. And I'm sure you're seeing that as well.
Amen. Yeah.
So now, any advice for maybe the franchisee out there that maybe was new to the system and then they're in and now they got this to deal with on top of just starting a business? How are you kind of working with them to get them off the ledge a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our first step was the fact that we knew we needed to step up as a brand, so we immediately cut our royalties in half, and we also pulled the local store marketing fund, so that saved the franchisees on the bottom line right away. Like I mentioned, we talked about how we negotiated with vendors to help extend terms. We also talked through best practices, conversations with your landlord about your leases. And this was all in advance of the CARES Act, obviously not having any idea what that was going to turn into. Making sure that they're looking at their P&L and where the items are that are most critical, making sure that you're turning off things that aren't necessarily business critical in the short term. But then beyond that, there's been a lot of just individual Q&A. And I think the biggest thing that people are dealing with is if they have employees who don't want to come to work, or if they've got somebody who's sick, or if they're with somebody who's being tested, or they're with somebody who's tested positive. How do you address each of those situations? And in all honesty, the biggest thing is just an open dialogue and just a number of phone calls around how to handle those situations, because it's a very fluid situation. You're dealing with food. We understand what that means, and it's a high priority cleanliness has been a high priority in our industry for a very long time, but it was just enhancing all of those things to making sure that we're providing the best environment we can for our guests and the best environment we can for our employees, knowing full well that we're just not going to be perfect, and and we're doing the best we can. But I think the other thing that I'm seeing too from the community is the fact that they're just accepting these changes as they're being made on the fly. And I think that without that, we just, as a business, as a restaurant industry, we wouldn't be able to thrive if we didn't have our guests playing their part with us.
And I think this is going to be an opportunity for franchisors like yourself in terms of demonstrating this is how we behave under a crisis. So, you can count on us. because we didn't sit here and just wait and just, show up 3 months later and hope it all worked out. You're there really grinding with them and trying to be creative and trying to figure out ways to make it work. So for the person that is considering cousin subs, maybe not today, but down the road, what is the profile of a good cousin subs franchisee?
Yeah, quite honestly, I mean, we've got our financial standards, and I won't necessarily have to get into that, but ideally, our ideal candidate has prior restaurant experience and is either an operator or an above store operator, or has been an in-store operator to begin with. So they really understand how it gets glamorized and everybody thinks they want to run a restaurant. It's one of the hardest businesses there is out there to be involved in. But beyond that, I think, we have 4 different core values that we look at. We're grounded, we're optimistic, we're passionate, and we're purposeful. And it's crazy how we're seeing this the purposeful thing really come through today, and how we're seeing the optimism as well on the other side of where we're going to emerge. And so we just look at those core values and whether or not those individuals, as they sit across from the table, align with us. We're a small business. We're a family-owned business. We've been family-owned our entire time. We're entrepreneurial. We all roll our sleeves up when shit hits the fan, and apologize for the word there, and move forward the best we can. So I think that those are the types of people that gravitate towards our brand, and those are the types of people when we get word of mouth referrals, those are the types of people that are coming to meet with us. But I think quite honestly, we're a brand that's going to partner with you. We're a brand that's going to be able to help move forward through these times, and we've been around for 50 years, and we're going to be around for another 50, if God lets us.
Now, you're looking for partners that are interested in multiple territories, or is it something that you'd be happy with somebody that just, hey, I just want one in my local area?
Yeah, it's based on where we are in Wisconsin. There are individual opportunities, but I think for the most part, we're looking for that 3 to 5 system owner. I think there's a real value to having multiple stores. Certainly, one of the biggest things you run into is taking COVID out of the equation is if you have construction at one of your stores, how can you absorb that? The best way to absorb that is to have other stores. So yeah, probably looking for that 3 to 5 store owner. But if people want to be larger than that, certainly our group down in Chicago is a much larger deal than that. So, but I think we've got opportunities still within the state of Wisconsin, and then we've got opportunities around in and around the Chicagoland area to do some more. And that could come in any varying form. We've got large franchisees, and then we've got single unit operators too. So
good stuff. Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing your story. If somebody wanted to learn more, can you share the website coordinates for potential franchisees and or just somebody who's hungry?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can go to cousinsubs.com anytime you'd like to. And basically from there, you can flow through to any one of the individual pages that you're looking at to be an investor, or if you'd like to order, if you'd just like to know a little bit more about our brand, see our cuisine. It's a great website. Otherwise, download our app, Cousin Subs app, and you can do the same.
Good stuff. Well, thank you again for sharing your story, and best of luck.
I appreciate it, Lee. Thank you for your time.
All right. This is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on Franchise Marketing Radio.